Welcome, everybody. Thank you all for coming this evening to this wonderful location in Washington at the museum to launch in the Americas the UNHCR campaign to eradicate statelessness. Thank you. Without further ado, it's my honor and privilege to welcome the honorary lifetime Goodwill Ambassador of UNHCR, Ms. Barbara Hendricks.
Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child. A long ways from a home, a long ways from home. True believer, a long ways from a home, a long ways from home. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Sometimes I feel like I'm almost gone. Way up in the heavenly land, way up in the heavenly land. True believer, way up in the heavenly land, way up in the heavenly land. Sometimes I feel like a mother's child, a long ways from a home, a long ways from my home.
And thank you very much for coming all the way from Paris. I know you had other commitments, and you've decided, because of your passion for this issue in particular, to come and offer your presence today and your voice. And we'll be hearing more from you, I hope. I won't give a speech, but I do want to start off. I'll be the MC. My name is Shelley Pitterman. I'm the UNHCR representative here. And I'm so really grateful for your presence. We have a few speakers today to begin to think about and work together to eradicate statelessness in the Americas, in this hemisphere. The High Commissioner, who's here, launched on the 4th of November the campaign to eradicate statelessness globally, and we're quite convinced that we can do it in the Americas if we all work together. Today, represented here, we've got 23 countries that are represented, and I'm so grateful for ambassadors and their representatives who are here from countries all throughout the hemisphere, as well as some 46 or so organizations, non-governmental and intergovernmental, that are here as well to show your solidarity with this cause. This cause is personified in a woman named Tatiana Lesnikova, whom I haven't seen up front. I don't know where she is, but Tatiana has a story. Tatiana, please come. Very nice to see you. Tatiana is herself stateless, and her story is reflected in a video that we've prepared. It's on our website, but it's also in a book that you'll be receiving as part of a package of materials that you can take away with you and share in a report that UNHCR prepared called Citizens of Nowhere. And so we're very grateful that Tatiana has come and has shared her story with us in her presence today. So thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
We're very happy that you were able to make it. So tonight we have not necessarily in the order of presence, we have Assistant Secretary of State Ann Richard, who is our dear friend in the Bureau of Population, Refugee, and Migration Affairs. We have the Honorable Ambassador Brazil Dias da Costa, who is the Brazilian ambassador to the Organization of American States, who is here. We have the Honorable Ambassador Nilda Gare, who's from Argentina, who will speak today, and I won't say why yet. We'll let that be a surprise for everybody. And we have Viviana Kristashevets, who is from the NGO called SEJOL. So I'm very, very happy that everybody is here today. And we'll top it off, of course, with a statement by the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, Antonio Guterres. So thank you all very much for coming, and let me, without further ado, introduce Ann Richard to take the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Shelley. I'm so happy to be here tonight. I think it's a great occasion, the launch of this Statelessness Initiative campaign report that we'll all be getting. Of course, I would have come anyway just to hear Barbara Hendricks in an empty room with just the two of us, so it wasn't that hard to get me here. But I'd like to thank Shelley for organizing and thank the High Commissioner for UNHCR's leadership on this issue. And I don't remember seeing so many UNHCR staff outside of Geneva. So maybe Paul Spiegel later on, after a few drinks, you can lead us through some sort of mock drill and responding to refugee needs, okay? So stick around, people. It's going to get very exciting later on. I want to briefly say a few words about who the stateless are, why Americans, and when I say Americans, I mean citizens of the United States of America, all of a sudden that word kind of has a different meaning as I look around and see all these ambassadors from Latin America. Why Americans should care about them and what the U.S. government is doing about the situation. So who are the stateless? As you just heard, there are 10 million stateless persons around the world, including over 210,000 in our part of the world, the Americas. Over 1/3 of the stateless are children. I believe that many Americans do not understand the plight of stateless people, because we rarely encounter it ourselves in the United States. Children born overseas to American parents and anyone born here in the United States has the right to U.S. citizenship. But this doesn't happen in many other countries around the world. Other countries do not give automatic citizenship to those born within their borders. In 27 countries, children can be left stateless because women do not have the same rights as men to confer nationality. So if a woman gives birth and the child's father is not around to confer his nationality, the baby may be denied the mother's citizenship, leaving the child with no citizenship at all. This has happened to thousands of Syrian refugee children born without documentation and without fathers present to help secure their nationality. The war in the Middle East, in Syria, has torn families apart. Yet despite these circumstances, in Jordan, Lebanon, and Syria as well, a father must be present for a baby to be granted citizenship. And as a result, these children, who have already faced unspeakable violence and instability in their lives, and will have difficulty attending school, will also face the new and profound challenge of having no nationality. And it is a tragedy happening right now. Last year, when I traveled to Kuwait for the first pledging conference for Syrian refugees, I also made time to meet with some activists who are concerned about statelessness in the Gulf states. And these were all Kuwaiti women a very impressive group, who were speaking out in support of the Bedouin population. And this is a stateless population of over 100,000 people living in Kuwait and elsewhere in the Gulf. And the Bedouin were left without a nationality when Kuwait became independent in 1961. And let's face it, these people were already marginalized, but because of their lack of nationality, it makes their situation so much worse. And it is a problem that not only hurts the Bedouin population, it affects Kuwaiti society overall by creating a marginalized and vulnerable group that faces huge barriers to becoming self-sufficient and contributing members of society. So, why should Americans care? What are we doing about statelessness? Americans should care for several reasons. First, we want to stop needless suffering and indignity. Second, seeing individuals stripped of rights and protections, branded as outcasts, and not recognized as equal in dignity and rights clashes with our values as Americans. So does the notion that children inherit this unfair status and pass it on to their children. We believe that all people are created equal. Third, this is a solvable problem. Already we have seen instances where countries ended this type of discrimination. For instance, in Bangladesh in 2008, a high court ruling recognized 300,000 Urdu speakers as citizens. And in Cote d'Ivoire in 2013, amendments to legislation allowed long-term stateless residents to acquire nationality. That legal reform enabled many of the 700,000 stateless persons in Cote d'Ivoire to become citizens. UNHCR tells us that since 2003, over 4 million stateless persons have, in fact, acquired a nationality. So this is something that when we get behind it, it could work. Here's what we're doing in the US. We support the UN High Commissioner for Refugees' mandate to prevent and reduce statelessness and to protect stateless persons. The United States is the largest single donor to UNHCR, providing over $1.2 billion to UNHCR in this very, very challenging last year of fiscal year 2014. These contributions to UNHCR's core budget help fund its efforts to address statelessness. And we use diplomacy to mobilize other governments to prevent and resolve situations that leave people stateless. And in 2011, the US government launched the Women's Nationality Initiative, and its goal is to get countries to change nationality laws that discriminate against women, because these laws are a major cause of statelessness. As part of this initiative, the U.S. put forward a resolution on the right to nationality with a focus on women and children at the 20th session of the UN Human Rights Council in 2012. The resolution highlighted women's equal right to a nationality. This includes being able to acquire and retain nationality and transmit it to their children on an equal basis with men, and this effort is picking up momentum. 49 governments co-sponsored the resolution, and it passed by consensus, a very significant achievement. Finally, the United States is pleased to support the international campaign to end gender discrimination in nationality laws, and UNHCR is a member of the steering committee of this campaign with the Women's Refugee Commission, other non-governmental organizations, in Tilburg University. And this campaign conducts advocacy in 12 countries around the world and aims to host a side event in Beijing plus 20 commemorations at the Commission on the Status of Women in March 2015 in New York. So, in conclusion, this latest campaign, UNHCR's Global Action Plan to End Statelessness, is ambitious, but it should be achievable. If each of us, as citizens, leaders, advocates, government officials, maybe even a few of you UNHCR staffers that I've got my eye on, if each of us pledges to engage and to push for needed reforms, with enough political will, this problem can be resolved, and in fact, statelessness can be ended in our lifetimes. So I applaud UNHCR for launching this campaign. Thank you very much.
I should note here that the Senate bill that made it through the Senate last year had for the first time very important references to identifying and addressing stateless people in the United States. So there is some hope, expectation that those provisions will one day become law. It's now my pleasure and honor to introduce Mr. Breno Brasil Dias de Costa, representing Brazil to the OAS, because it's important for us that the OAS is here to give the Americas recognition for all of the work that it's doing, to support human rights in the Americas, and also Brazil, which will be hosting the 30th anniversary of the Cartagena Declaration. So, Ambassador, please welcome.
Well, good evening, everybody. Well, first of all, on behalf of Brazil, I would like to compliment the UNHCR on launching this global campaign to eradicate statelessness. We hope this campaign will raise awareness on a challenge that affects at least 10 million people worldwide. We are all familiar with the difficulties faced by refugees and internally displaced persons. Although we still have a lot of work to do, much has been done to alleviate the suffering of these individuals. The plight of stateless persons, however, is silent. The lack of a legal bond to a state deprives them of a sense of identity and compromises their access to public health, education, or legal employment. We believe that reducing the vulnerability of so many human beings is a duty we all must fulfill. This is why Brazil has decided to take an inclusive approach and abide by two of the most important conventions related to statelessness: the 1954 Convention relating to the status of stateless persons and the 1961 Convention on the reduction of statelessness. I would like to take this opportunity to briefly share with you the recent Brazilian experience in dealing with this issue. As many of you know, Brazil has received throughout the centuries hundreds of thousands of immigrants from all continents who went there to live for a wide variety of reasons. The prevailing criterion for determining Brazilian citizenship has been jus solis. That is, as you know, any child born in Brazilian soil automatically acquires Brazilian nationality. But this criterion has been blended with the jus sanguinis, in which Brazilian citizenship is granted to those children born abroad whose mother or father is a Brazilian. Until 2007, there was a relevant condition for the exercise of such a right. The child of a Brazilian citizen born abroad had to go back to Brazil, reside there for some time, and then opt to acquire the Brazilian nationality before such a right could be fulfilled. In recent years, when emigration was the path chosen by hundreds of thousands of Brazilians, this condition became a serious issue for those born abroad, sons and daughters of Brazilians, in countries that applied predominantly or exclusively the jus sanguinis criterion. In this context, Brazilians abroad organized the movement called Brasileirinhos Apátridas, which means young stateless Brazilians, which gathered support to demand a constitutional amendment to drop the condition of previous residence in Brazil in order to receive Brazilian nationality. The Constitution was finally amended in September 2007. One of the lessons learned through this process was the importance of civil society's mobilization and media awareness to produce change. Initiatives such as the Global Campaign to End Statelessness may be the trigger for some countries to improve national legislation and adhere to the 1954 and 1961 conventions. At this moment, we are about to send a draft bill to Congress that aims to establish procedures on the recognition of stateless persons and to guarantee their rights. According to this draft bill, the state will be able to recognize as stateless all individuals who are not considered nationals by any country and will grant them the possibility of adopting Brazilian nationality if they so desire. This possibility will be also extended to their family members. Once their status is recognized by the Brazilian government, even if they do not wish to adopt the country's nationality, the stateless persons living in Brazil will have the same rights as other immigrants legally residing in Brazil. This initiative was based on a voluntary Brazilian commitment that followed the celebrations of the 60th anniversary of the 1951 Convention and the 50th anniversary of the 1961 Convention. In closing, I would like to tell you that next month, Brazil will host a ministerial meeting on the occasion of the 30th anniversary of the Cartagena Declaration on Refugees, during which a plan of action on enhancing protection and solutions across Latin America will be adopted. This is a further step to improve our regional framework regarding the protection of refugees, internally displaced, and stateless people. In this context, renewed attention is being given to the issue of statelessness. Brazil had a very positive experience in implementing both UN conventions on statelessness. We encourage other states to consider this moment as an opportunity to join such important instruments and make the necessary adjustments to prevent the statelessness. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. That is a lesson in best practice. Just if I may make a minor correction, the meeting that will be happening in Brasilia is not only for Latin America, it's also for the Caribbean. For the first time, to also incorporate the Caribbean into the perspectives of an all-Americas approach to refugee protection and eradicating statelessness. It's now my pleasure to invite the Ambassador of Argentina, Nilda Celia Gare, to the stage. Thank you.
Well, good evening to all of you. 30 years after democracy was restored, Argentina is currently in the process of strengthening different aspects of its human rights policy. In this regard, the policies towards the protection of human rights have become a state policy. Bearing this in mind, I would like to inform that Argentina has recently ratified the the Convention on the Reduction of Statelessness, depositing the instrument last November 13th. I would also like to announce that Argentina has just approved a special program of humanitarian visas for people affected by the Syrian conflict. This program aims to give concrete answers to the humanitarian crisis that is affecting that country, in particular to the situation of emergency of the population. We understand that the humanitarian crisis of the Syrian people requires commitments like this from all the states. Thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much for that important announcement, those important announcements. Now I'd like to invite Ms. Viviana Kristashevich from the Americas Network on Nationality and Statelessness to make some remarks.
Good evening to everybody. Your Excellency, Commissioner Guterres, esteemed panelists, state representatives, international agencies, civil society colleagues, ladies, gentlemen, friends. At the Center for Justice and International Law, we are grateful to have been invited by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees to commemorate the 60th anniversary of the adoption of the UN Convention relating to the status of stateless persons. We have learned in the last 15 years from our first-hand experience working in the Dominican Republic, accompanying children and families in the international litigation process. That has taught us that people who lack a nationality are susceptible to increased marginalization, discrimination, and insecurity. It is truly heartbreaking that the people that we represent and millions more are told that they simply do not exist. As stateless people, many are denied of their most basic rights. They cannot register the birth of their children, they cannot marry, receive medical treatment, get a job, open a bank account, travel outside the country, go to school, or even feel safe. All those situations of statelessness are uncommon in the Americas. They affect over 200,000 people. The numbers are not as high as in other regions, but we acknowledge that one stateless person is too many. In our continent, many situations merit closer examination because they can affect access to the right to a nationality. They include, for example, birth registration, gender discriminatory clauses in citizenship laws, discriminatory practices in the determination of nationality, the status of children born to parents lacking valid identity documents, among others. Commissioner Guterres, we admire your commitment towards stateless people around the world. Your presence in our hemisphere sends a strong message on the importance of tackling this issue through a comprehensive and well-structured plan. Your determination gives us hope that we have arrived at a turning point where we will be able to eradicate statelessness around the world. In the Americas, we are in a unique position to address the challenges that lay in front of us in the next decade. The commitment to respect of the right to a nationality for all was enshrined in the basic documents of the Inter-American System, the American Declaration and the American Convention on Human Rights. They create a comprehensive framework for the protection to the right to a nationality. Additionally, as Ambassador Breno said, most countries in the region offer a generous and combined application of the principles of jus soli and jus sanguinis for the acquisition of nationality through soil or blood, and thus diminishing significantly the risk of statelessness. Our regional multilateral institution, the OAS, and its human rights bodies have taken steps to address statelessness in our hemisphere. The General Assembly of the OAS has called member states to ratify the UN Conventions on Statelessness and to adjust their national policies. We also have a clear example of the role that human rights bodies can play. The Inter-American Court on Human Rights has analyzed the right to nationality in 2 advisory opinions and several cases. The Inter-American Commission has addressed the issue since the 1970s. And moreover, there have been important steps taken by many countries in the region in the last few years. We've heard from Argentina, the latest good news. Suriname recently modified its law eliminating gender discrimination in access to citizenship. Mexico adopted a national procedure for determining the status of stateless persons. Uruguay is currently considering a bill to achieve this goal. We've heard from Brazil that we might have more good news. And so with this framework in mind, a group of civil society organizations, academic initiatives, and individuals have come together to join the Global Action Plan of the UNHCR in order to eradicate and prevent statelessness in the following 10 years. It is with great pleasure that today I formally announce the launch of the Americas Network on Nationality and Statelessness. I would really like to thank the generosity of the Open Society Foundation for their support on this, but also remember Dilcia, Jan, Violeta Bosico, and the other children and families that we represent, and to the tireless human rights defender Sonia Pierre for inspiring so much of our actions throughout the years. Through this platform, thank you. We're truly excited. We believe that through this platform, we can actually work hand in hand with UNHCR in order to raise awareness of the issue, identify risks, support stateless persons, cooperate with states, exchange information with our sister organizations around the world. We firmly believe that nationality is the key that opens the door to other rights. We believe that together we can change realities. We embrace the shared vision of a world where everybody has a nationality. Like you, Commissioner Guterres, we insist that it is time to end the injustice of statelessness. You can count on every member of this network, of the Americas Network on Nationality and Statelessness, to help make this happen. Thank you so much.
High Commissioner.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, let me first of all thank all those that have been here before me participating in this event. Barbara Hendricks, a voice from heaven telling us that we must make sure that injustice stops on earth. But Anne Richards, who has been a very solid partner of UNHCR, an extremely committed champion in relation to the protection of refugees, but also for the eradication of statelessness. And I would like to remind you all of what has been done in the US in order to guarantee the rights of stateless people living in this country, but especially the leadership that the US has assumed in relation to the eradication of gender discrimination in nationality laws, one of the sources of statelessness in the world. Caríssimo Embaixador Dias da Costa, é para mim um enorme prazer tê-lo aqui conosco, but I would like to say that what you have said is a lesson that is very important, because it demonstrated our country can address two of the problems that exist in many situations around the world, I would say involuntarily, because enough attention was not paid to address this plight of the stateless people. First of all, the need to adjust nationality laws to make sure that gaps that might eventually exist are addressed. And they might exist for all kinds of reasons, and namely because of the changing situation of a population. My country was a country of emigration, it became a country of immigration, now it's again a country of emigration. And this, of course, has implications in the lives of people, and if nationality laws do not take into account these circumstances, gaps can exist when someone is linked to two countries at the same time. And on the other hand, the fact that Brazil has established a methodology to determine who's a stateless person and to guarantee the rights of stateless people. Because in many countries, the convention is adopted, but there is no mechanism to detect who's a stateless person. And because of that, many people see themselves without their rights being recognized by the state where they live, even if the intention of the state is positive, but the instruments are not there to guarantee the rights. Enormous joy for the fact that Argentina, thank you very much, Ambassador Garre, the fact that Argentina was the last country to ratify the Convention on Reduction of Statelessness. The other convention was already ratified by Argentina. And let me express my deep appreciation for the announcement made by the Executive Director of SEGIL of the creation of the Americas Network on Nationality and Statelessness. The role of the civil society, as it was stressed, academia, NGOs, other organizations, public opinion, media, the role of the civil society is absolutely vital, especially in an area where there is enormous lack of knowledge and awareness about what it represents in the world. And so the fact that the network is moving is very good news for us all. Indeed, UNHCR is engaged in the launch of a campaign to eradicate statelessness in 10 years' time. Some might ask, but does it make sense? Is it necessary? Others might ask, but is it not too ambitious? In relation to the first question, I think it is absolutely necessary. Statelessness has been probably the most forgotten aspect of human rights in the international community. And it was indeed the most forgotten aspect of UNHCR's mandate. We were much more focused on refugees than on stateless people. But a refugee is someone that is forced to flee his or her country, but a refugee as a country. A stateless person is a person that has not a country to call his or hers. So, to a certain extent, it's even a more radical violation of human rights to allow for stateless people to exist in such large numbers and to suffer what they suffer in many situations. Obviously, in a country like Brazil, a stateless person has its rights guaranteed, but in many other situations around the world, stateless people are totally ignored or discriminated. And a member of my family recently asked me, but I mean, your campaign, I said, what does it mean? And I told that cousin that I was talking to, I told him, well, look, think that tomorrow you are going to wake up, not in Portugal, but in one of these countries where you have large discrimination of important sectors of the population. And then think that you go to your wallet and there is no driver's license, there is no social security card, in my country ID card, no credit cards, no any other document with your name. Think that you go to a school and your children are not accepted, a public school, that you go to an hospital and nobody treats you, and that if you die, your family doesn't even get a death certificate. And to be honest, my cousin was not aware of the fact that there are millions of people in the world in this situation. And he was shocked, and he said, well, no, I understand that this is something that needs to be done. This is something that is an anomaly in the 21st century. This is something that is totally unacceptable in today's world. But is it not too ambitious to try to eradicate in 10 years' time? First, as it was said, in the last 10 years, 4 million people gained access to nationality. And we have a number of situations in which political decisions are essential because we are dealing with populations that are discriminating within their own countries and not recognized by their own states. The Rohingyas of Myanmar are the most well-known situation. And here it's a question of political will. And when political will comes, it's a win-win situation for the state. Because no state has any advantage in keeping in a limbo a part of its population, even from the security point of view. It's important that everybody is recognized with a legal status, even for not only for the rights of the people, but also for the guarantees in relation to the security of the state and of its population. And so I do believe that if political leaders think twice about the problem they have in their countries, in the situations that exist, I think that the right thing to do is indeed to recognize those communities as being part of the state and granting them the correspondent nationality. On the other hand, I see a lot of countries that are ratifying the conventions, 43 ratifications since we commemorated the 60th anniversary of the 5th UN Convention, 43 ratifications done by countries, and many have changed their nationality laws. And namely, they have changed their nationality laws in order to guarantee that mothers can convey the nationality to their children. And there are only now 27 countries in the world where that is yet not possible. And we hope that those 27 countries will be able to change their legislation also in the near future. Again, it's a win-win situation. It's an important step towards gender equality, and it's an important step for the prevention of statelessness. But I would like to say here today that our hope is to see the Americas as the first continent to eradicate statelessness. And there are good reasons to think it is possible. First of all, there is a strong momentum in the continent. I don't want to forget any of the countries, but there were ratifications of the conventions since we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the 6th UN Convention. There were ratifications by Colombia, Ecuador, El Salvador, Honduras, Jamaica, Nicaragua, Paraguay, Panama, Peru, and Argentina. I mean, it's a remarkable movement within a continent. It's a remarkable movement within a continent. Recently, Suriname and Bahamas have changed their nationality laws in order to allow gender equality in the nationality laws. So there is a momentum in Latin America. There is a civil society that is committed, and there is a human rights-minded approach in practically the whole continent in relation to the need to eradicate human rights violations. There are naturally problems to solve. There are nationality laws that need fine-tuning or improvement. There are mechanisms of recognition of stateless people that need to be implemented. There is one situation that is the most dramatic one, of the descendants of Haitians that are in Dominican Republic and other countries and need to see their problem also solved. And my hope is that in these 10 years there will be progress guaranteeing that no one is left in the Americas without a nationality, without a country that they can call theirs. We all count on you all. We all count on you all to do everything possible, and each one of us can do something to make it happen, everything possible for not only statelessness to be eradicated in the next 10 years, but for the Americas to be the first continent to do so. Thank you very much.
Thank you, High Commissioner. It's always an honor pleasure to listen to what you have to say about issues. Last year it was when you released the report on children on the run that had such an important impact on the narrative of that story, and now we're hoping that will make substantial change in relation to statelessness in the Americas. Without further ado, I'd like to welcome Barbara Hendricks back to the stage and ask also kindly that this not be recorded. We'll have an official recording that Harris will share with everybody who wants a copy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. You're probably wondering why I'm involved in this campaign to eradicate statelessness. But, you know, I was born, for all intents and purposes, in a country in which I was a second-class citizen, a refugee. I was not stateless, but I was not a citizen. I was born 10 days before the General Assembly of the United Nations proclaimed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But neither my parents nor my grandparents, where I was born, had ever heard of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. But they had heard of the Jim Crow laws that we had to live under. And so I was a non-citizen until around 1964, when the Civil Rights Voting Act passed. I then felt like I had become a citizen. I had become a citizen with rights, and you know, the importance of rights is that they guarantee our freedom. But more importantly, I became a citizen with responsibilities and duties. And it's the actions of our civic duty that ensures freedom for all. In 1986, a man named Leon David visited me at my home in Montreux, Switzerland, and asked me if I would be interested in becoming a goodwill ambassador for the UNHCR, an organization that I had heard of, but like most people, confused it with UNICEF, UNESCO, and whatever else began with UN. After reading about and learning about the UNHCR, I agreed, because I thought it would be a great opportunity for me to put into action what I believe is so essential if we want to live in peace and in harmony with one another, is that what our action must be based on respect for the human rights of all, and in every situation, in our families, at our work, with our colleagues, and as often as we can with strangers. And I have been mostly inspired by my colleagues in the field who devoted their lives, who have lost their lives for the cause of refugees. But even more, I've been inspired by the refugees themselves, particularly the women, who are in the most difficult situations and who with great dignity continue to struggle and fight for themselves and the sake of their children. They cannot give up, so I will not give up. But after nearly 30 years of working with this organization, I had no idea of the magnitude of the problem of statelessness until I read an article by the High Commissioner in 2011 when he made a very fervent appeal to end statelessness in the world. And I said, how can I have been working for refugees all this time and not know that there were millions of people who are stateless in this world? And I immediately said to the High Commissioner, I want to work on this campaign. I want to work on this campaign because it is not it's not media sexy. And also the situations are difficult to explain and complicated, but it's exactly the kind of challenge that I like. And I have met, since I've begun to work on this, with many stateless people from all over the world. Their stories have brought tears to my eyes. And when they've told me what their daily lives are like, it is unimaginable. And so I have decided that I really will do all I can to shed a light on the 10 million of forgotten, faceless, and invisible people, to alleviate their suffering, because they're suffering in the dark. They're suffering in silence, without a voice. So I am raising my voice on their behalf as we look forward to reaching our goals in 2024.
As far back as I can remember, I either had to plow or hoe. That old 9-foot cotton sack standing at the old turn row down in Mississippi, way down in Mississippi, down in Mississippi, where I was born, down in Mississippi, where I come from, way down, way down. I had a hunting season on the rabbit. If you shoot one, you went to jail. But the season was always open on us. Nobody needed no bail. Down in Mississippi, way down in Mississippi, down in Mississippi, where I was born, down in Mississippi, where I come from, way down, way down. Till went down to Mississippi, dared to speak to a white man's wife, and the Jim Crow laws had a verdict for him. They took away his life. Down in Mississippi, way down in Mississippi, where I was born, where I come from, way down, way down.
The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article number 1. All human beings are born equal and free, equal in dignity and in rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act toward one another in a spirit of sister and brotherhood.
Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. No more crying, no more crying, no more crying over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. day. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Oh, freedom. Over me. And before I'll be a slave, I'll be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. Thank you for Tatiana and all the stateless people. And I'd also like to thank my husband. I get a free accompaniment. Thank you very much.